What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Just Sayin Podcast, episode number 29. As you can see, Sutton and I, we're still at home. Been seeing a little bit of each other. We got tomorrow, we're going to our Harris County's high school playoff game. They're playing Jefferson. Probably going to get absolutely smoked by Sammy Brown and company. That's where Malachi Starks used to go to high school, so shout out to him. But today we're going to be previewing rivalry weekend because we got that this weekend. So we're going to give our top 5 rivalries in all of college football over the history of the whole game. And then we're also going to review the Egg Bowl. So why not we go ahead and get to it?
First off, I just want to say for the viewers on YouTube, a lot more things look different than just our backgrounds, right? Obviously, got a new haircut, don't have the mullet anymore, had to retire it. Maybe that's why I played so bad in golf yesterday against you.
Let's go.
Who knows? Jake showed up, showed out. We ended up tying, and him and Jake Jordan, one of our good buddies, ended up taking the win and a putt off. So congratulations to you guys. I'll see you guys.
Look, it was my second round of 18 ever. It was his first round of 18, and we beat you. So how does that make you feel?
I mean, it is what it is after not playing for a month, but no excuses, no excuses. I played horrible. Congratulations to you guys. But yeah, let's get into this week 13 of college football. Obviously, I know you were going to pose to me the question before I interrupted you so rudely about what were my thoughts about the Egg Bowl tonight. And I did watch this game. Dude, I miss Mike Leach so much after watching tonight's game. Tonight's game was just so boring. Not only was Mississippi State's offense horrible, but you could tell that Will Rogers has been affected by that shoulder injury that's kind of plagued him for most of this season. And whether that was his last game that we'll see him at Mississippi State or just in college in general, you got to tip your cap to that guy. I mean, SEC leader in passing yards career-wise for, historically speaking, that's a huge accomplishment for him, for the Mississippi State program, who typically doesn't have the greatest players, but they do have a player who stamped their name in history. So congratulations to Will Rogers. If this is a career-ending, a well-done job for him. But yeah, Mississippi State, they've got to go find themselves a coach that can revitalize this program, because they had actually played really good on defense tonight, I thought. I mean, we know what this Ole Miss offense brings, and since the Georgia game, they've looked different, obviously. I mean, it's really defeating when you get beat that bad on the road by a really good team. But, they ended up battling it out tonight. And they won an ugly game thanks to Quinshon Judkins and Ulysses Bentley and that ground game. Jackson Dart made some big throws towards the end on third down. But I came away from this game really impressed with Mississippi State's defense. And then Ole Miss's just gritty approach to winning the game tonight. So hat tip to Lane Kiffin and the folks over there in Oxford. Only the second time in program history that they've won 10 games in a season. What was the first time, you may ask? 2 years ago under Lane Kiffin. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Lane Kiffin may be the best head coach in Ole Miss football history.
Yeah, I mean, very well could be. The only 2 losses they have are to Bama and Georgia, and they mentioned it, Jordan Rogers, and I can't remember the other announcer tonight.
Tom Hart.
Who?
Tom Hart.
I don't think I've ever heard of him.
He does a lot of SEC basketball, but yeah, he's really good.
They mentioned against Bama, they were out Trey Harris, their best receiver, and Priest Horn, their starting tight end. It was his first game back. And so they were mentioning that game could look different if it was played now. But of course had that loss to Georgia. So, I mean, huge props to Lane Kiffin getting 10 wins, potentially 11. We'll see how this bowl game goes wherever they play. But I have a couple takeaways. I mean, you mentioned it, Will Rogers. Props to him. He took over Aaron Murray's record of most pass yards ever in the SEC. But I think I realized tonight, and I didn't even know he had a shoulder injury. Was it his right shoulder?
Yeah, throwing shoulder.
Okay, that makes sense though. So, because, dude, I was just watching some of his throws, and he has zero just speed on the ball. Just no arm talent from what I can see. Anytime he tries to make a throw to the sideline, it just dies. There's one on I think it was their second to last drive, and it was 4th and 7, and they needed it. I think it was a PI. I don't know why they didn't really call it. It looked like he pulled him from behind, but the ball just died on him. I mean, he was open and then it just died.
I disagree on the PI call on that, because I thought both of them were kind of fighting, and I also thought the ball was kind of uncatchable. But also, what kind of a 4th down call is that? You're
I
on the
know.
you're on the
That's
left hash and you want to throw the ball all the way to the right sideline. I mean,
yeah,
that's just a bad call.
that's fine if you have a great QB with a lot of arm talent. But
Yeah.
like I said, Will Rogers doesn't have it. And I mean, I had never watched really any of their games before. I had just seen his stats all of the past 3 years. Just thought he was really, really good. And then I guess it's just him in an air raid system. Because I mean, if I'm an NFL scout, I'm not taking him in the first 7 rounds. I'm not taking him. I don't know what someone would see in him. Just his arm talent's not there. And maybe, yeah, he can succeed in an air raid offense, but a pro style offense, I can't see it. And then also I was kind of right, not kind of right. I think I was right on Jackson Dart this year. You were huge on him in the middle of the year. I never saw it. It was similar with Will Rogers, how he used to be. I think it was just Ole Miss's offense, and he always succeeded. And I get it. He got injured against Georgia pretty badly. But I mean, he came back from it and
Took some hits tonight too.
no, I was about to say, I mean, I didn't leave the game not impressed because his toughness impresses me because he got hit hard on a 3rd and long. And then Spencer Sanders came in, converted the 4th down, and then Jackson Dart came right back in after one play when I thought he could have been out for the whole game. He got hit hard. But so toughness is there. Throwing ability not there for me. I don't think he's very good. I think I probably rated him too high. I had him at 6 whenever he ranked SEC quarterbacks earlier in the season. So just not too impressed with him. But Quinshon Judkins, I mean, he looks like himself again. He's running hard. It reminds me of Isaiah Pacheco on the Chiefs right now. I mean, I just feel like he earns every single yard he gets. And pretty much beats the ground up as soon as he runs the ball. I mean, he runs aggressively and physically. So, I mean, I'm actually impressed with Ole Miss with this win because their defense won the game. Because we all know their offense can win most of the games. So their defense stepped up and they won it. Even though Mississippi State's offense is terrible, but still, you left this game with a win. And it's a historic rivalry. We'll touch on that later, but I'm impressed.
Yeah, and Ulysses Bentley too, another running back. He got banged up there towards the end of the game. Really good runner as well. But let's also just remember this Mississippi State team is not very good. I mean, they're 5-7 for a reason. They're not a very good football team. And what's crazy is there's not a ton of 6-6 teams. There's still a possibility that this 5-7 Mississippi State team can make a bowl game due to the teams they've played, and also them beating Arizona, a team that has been hot that we've touched on a lot this season on this program. So yeah, props to Ole Miss getting a gritty win tonight.
Sorry. Yeah, I agree. Let's go ahead and jump in to some rivalries. We'll start with the game in Atlanta, Georgia Tech, Georgia. Georgia Tech. Their name does not go first. Bunch of nerds over there. This game's not going to be close. I'm not going to spend too long on it. I mean, we talked about it before. Georgia Tech actually has a really good offense. I think they're top 35 in the nation in yards per game and like top 32 in points per game. So their offense is pretty good. But whenever they go up against this defense, they're probably not going to be able to get many yards, many points. I anticipate them keeping it close in the first quarter, if that counts for anything. I think we'll be winning by 3 at the end of the first. Maybe they'll score a touchdown, maybe 2. But by the end of the game, this game is going to be close. So I just want to see us get off to a hot start, keep that momentum going into the game against Bama. So, but still, I mean, the point applies whenever I was talking about us having the stretch against Missouri, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. And it turned out not going that way as we blew 2 of those teams out. But, I mean, you just escape with a win. It really doesn't matter if you win an OT. I mean, it'll be kind of embarrassing if you go to OT with Georgia Tech, but still, as long as you win, I mean, it essentially doesn't matter. I think there is a chance, and we'll talk about it later, there is a chance that Georgia can sneak into the playoff with a loss to Bama. It'll be really tough, and it depends on how the other teams do. But, I mean, as long as you win this game, I mean, you control your own destiny.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how Georgia really comes out in this game as well. Like you said, can they keep that momentum of these past 3 tough games that they played? We've seen it a couple times this year with some other marquee teams like Washington. We've seen these sandwich games, or Michigan was a great example last week playing Maryland, coming off a huge game. Then they have kind of a not so good team before they play Ohio State. Maryland took them by surprise, kept it within a touchdown. Michigan ends up winning the game. But we saw Michigan bleed a lot, and we saw a lot of teams say, wow, that maybe we can, do what Maryland did and exploit them for this weakness and this one and this one and this one. Can Georgia Tech do that to Georgia? Certainly. I mean, Georgia Tech is a much more capable team than I think people have given them credit for. Brent Key, former offensive line coach at Alabama, has done a great job in that with that program so far. I mean, Atlanta was going to recruit itself. It's always tough to recruit to Georgia Tech because of the academic standards that they have set in place there. But if you can recruit around that and you can keep talent from the Atlanta metro area, then that's going to be playing straight to your advantage. Because if you can keep kids home near Atlanta, a lot of kids are going to want to do that. And Brent Key's had some success doing that so far. He's had a lot of success in the transfer portal. It starts with Haynes King. Obviously, everything runs through that offense at Georgia Tech. Really bad defense, which is where I expect Carson Beck to have another huge game. But will Georgia come out kind of like Michigan did against Maryland or Washington did a couple of times earlier in the season? I don't think so. I think Georgia's going to steamroll in this game. Maybe, like you said, maybe they're only up by 3 by the end of the first quarter. But I think once that point kind of goes on, Georgia will end up winning by 20 plus, maybe even 30 plus in this game. I'm not sure what the line is. Do you know what the line is?
24.
24. Yeah, I think Georgia probably will cover this line. It may look a little closer at the beginning of the game, first half, but Georgia ultimately pulls away. I just think with Kirby, the way Kirby has coached this team this year and in the past couple seasons, that they are not looking over any opponent. They may have, Kirby and his staff may have worked for Alabama during this week, maybe, but they certainly aren't going to let the players know that they've done that because Georgia Tech is their main focus right now, just like it would be for Alabama if this was Alabama in their situation. We know Nick Saban and Kirby Smart do things very similarly, if not the same. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Georgia comes out, like you said. But I expect nothing but joyless murder ball from the Georgia Bulldogs and the old-fashioned hate, which there hasn't been much hate recently. So we'll see if Georgia Tech can maybe reinstill that rivalry. Hint, hint.
Yeah. Speaking from experience from the last 2 seasons when I got to see them in 21 and 22 in their natty seasons, they don't look over any opponent. I mean, it doesn't matter if we were playing UT Martin, Ball State. I mean, I can't give too much information, but I mean, the practices look the same, whether we're playing in the natty or we're playing, like I said, Ball State. So, I mean, just the urgency and the lack of complacency that they always have amazes me. I mean, I don't know how Kirby does it, but he always gets them riled up for every game. Especially, I mean, this is clean old-fashioned hate. Hasn't been that way about the last couple of years. But I mean, Kirby has let the press know he still hates Georgia Tech. He knows this is a rivalry and it's for who runs the state. And so they're going to come out hard. They're going to keep that momentum. And I mean, I didn't get my prediction, but I think it went unsaid. Georgia's going to cover.
Well, like we were talking about when you came over to my house a couple of days, we were sitting around talking to my parents about Georgia Tech in the 90s. They were amazing. And that was kind of when Kirby was at Georgia. So like, I think Kirby knows if Brent Key can do a good job at Georgia Tech, maybe Georgia Tech can kind of reminisce some of what they had in the 90s, with that talent that's sitting there in Atlanta, so who knows what Georgia Tech's capable of in the future. But I think Brent Key, and he's kind of made it an emphasis that, Georgia's our most important game of the year, and we're going to prepare for that. I think he said that in his introductory press conference. Yeah, I was watching that. So as much of a joke as you think that is, maybe he can make some stuff happen. Maybe not, definitely not this year, but maybe in the near future. And with the way NIL is and the way the transfer portal is, it's certainly possible. We've seen it across college football all season. And who's to say Georgia Tech couldn't be a player in the future?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and take this to the Iron Bowl. What do you think about your game tomorrow? Sorry, not tomorrow, Saturday.
Dude, I'm looking so much forward to this game. Never been to Jordan-Hare for an Iron Bowl, so this will be my first time going. Go with my buddy Josh Batchelor and his family. Going to be sitting up literally on the last section in the nosebleed. Really looking forward to watching the Crimson Tide take on the Auburn Tigers. Obviously, we talked about it all season. Georgia went in there, voodoo magic. We've seen it in previous years. Auburn's honoring their 2013 Iron Bowl team that took the kick six back. Chris Davis is going to be there. So there's going to be a lot of voodoo going on in the stadium. Nick Marshall will be there. So we know the black magic and Satan and the devil is coming out Saturday night or Saturday afternoon at Jordan-Hare. We know what's going to happen. It happens every year. But is Alabama a team obviously peaking at the right time? I think that is important to characterize when we're talking about this game. And what did Auburn just come off of? A brutal, absolutely brutal loss against a non-Power 5 opponent in New Mexico State. Granted, New Mexico State's a better team than a lot of people give them credit for, but Alabama is on a completely different level than most teams are in college football right now. Obviously, we saw Auburn take Georgia to the wire earlier in the season. But I think the way that Alabama and Georgia are kind of playing right now at the top of their leagues, obviously I have them ranked 1 and 2 in my leaderboard. Don't have Auburn even sniffing the top 25. I just think both of these programs are kind of on different trajectories to finish the season. Obviously, Auburn's already bowl eligible, so they don't have to worry about that with a win. And sure, I think some crazy stuff will happen in this game. I do actually have Auburn covering. Earlier in the week, I saw the line was at 10.5. And since then, it's gone up to, I think, 14, maybe even 14.5. And I think Auburn keeps it closer in that than 14. But I think it's one of those games where we saw kind of last week, I forget who was playing, where they were just in complete control the whole game, but it was like a 9-point win. Do you remember who that was? I was trying to remember what game I was watching, but
I think that was Oregon that was Oregon against USC, if that's what you're talking about, a couple weeks ago.
Yes. Or even Michigan Penn State was a 9-point game. Michigan was in control the whole game. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see this upcoming week. I don't think there's going to be a ton of scoring in this game. Honestly, I think the final score for me is more like 24-14. I think Alabama wins 24-14. Usually we see a lot of really good defensive performances in the Iron Bowl. And if Auburn's going to do anything in this game, it's going to be able to play defense. Peyton Thorne has been playing a lot better as of late, so we'll see what happens with that. But just the lack of playmakers around him, really besides Jarquez Hunter, I think is really what gives Auburn such a disadvantage. And I think if this game was being played in Tuscaloosa, Alabama wins by 24, maybe even 28. But just because it's played in Auburn, you got to give them their respect. But Alabama is going to win this game. They're going to look in control. Hopefully the turnover margins aren't as bad in this game. Obviously, and then a couple injury updates before I kick it to you and what your takeaways are of the preview. Deontay Lawson, Jalen Key, kind of been talking about in the last couple of weeks. Both got banged up against LSU. They are practicing this week. Don't know if they're going to play or not. Both of them are questionable for the game. So we could continue to see the Trezman Marshall and Jahad Campbell duo at linebacker, and possibly even Christian Story, a local guy from Lynette, Alabama, about 30 minutes away from Auburn, play safety. So we'll just have to see about that. Obviously, Jermaine Burton's back, and Kobe Prentice should be good to go as well for this game. So really the two guys you got to look at are on defense, and that's Key and Lawson. Lawson, obviously, a much bigger storyline there. But I do think Alabama will win the game despite Auburn covering.
Yeah, like you mentioned it. I mean, comparing this game to the Auburn-Georgia game, it fits. I mean, you're talking about two of the best teams in the nation against Auburn. They're both playing on the road at Jordan-Hare. But the key difference between the two is that Georgia's took place their first home game of the season, their fifth game of the season. Carson Beck's first road start ever. And so we were trying to identify ourselves, trying to find our identity. This game is happening at the very end of the season. Jalen Milroe has already been battle tested, and Auburn is coming off a 21-point loss to New Mexico State. So with that being said, I think it is going to be competitive, and I think you're exactly right. I think Alabama's in control the whole time, and Auburn has a chance to make it a game through the first three quarters, but I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So I think it's maybe a 10-point game going into the fourth, but then Bama wins the fourth quarter by 14 points, and the game's ended up winning by 21-24. So I think it's a game for the first three quarters, and then Bama just pours it on. So I'm going to have Bama covering. I'm just interested to see, because obviously Auburn's defense is better than what people have said they are. I think they have a lot of playmakers, especially Jalen Simpson, their safety who had a pick against us. He's really good. But I mean, you're going to need superhuman efforts from their offense. People who need to show out, who haven't done that this season. You're going to need Jarquez Hunter to play out of his mind. You're going to need Rivaldo Fairweather. I think he's a tight end transfer from, do you know FIU? I think somewhere in Florida. Anyway, you're going to need them to show up and show out like they haven't this year. I know Jarquez Hunter has been serviceable, but he hasn't been the back that at least I thought he was going to be. And you're going to need Peyton Thorne to put them on his back, which can he do it? Probably not. But you're going to need
playing very well recently.
He has. He's kind of
been a one-man show on offense recently.
Yeah, I was telling Sutton, I saw a stat yesterday that he was, over the last 4 weeks, he's the 7th rated QB in the whole nation. Jalen Milroe is number 9. And so, I mean, been playing well lately, but he hasn't faced a defense like Alabama. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, I think it's competitive, close. It is the Iron Bowl, and there's voodoo magic in there, like you said. I think it'll be close for the first three quarters, but Bama pulls away with it at the end and covers.
Yeah, really looking forward to being in Auburn on Saturday for my first Iron Bowl in Auburn. I think it'll be a really good experience. Hopefully, it'll be a good experience because if we lose, it won't be, and I'll be very pissed off. But let's take it to probably the biggest game of the weekend, the
One
game
of the
that,
biggest games of the season.
yeah, potentially a playoff game, and just that's happening in the regular season, really to decide the Big Ten. We know that the winner of this game more than likely is going to win the Big Ten unless Iowa just happens to have some magic happen, which obviously me and Jake have been kind of making fun of them all season, which is funny. As you mentioned it, just a quick note, the Iowa-Nebraska over-underline is down to 24.5. Yeah.
It's
Wow. Wow.
that was going to be one of my best bets because I thought it was going to be like 28 or 29. It's 24 and a half.
24.5. I think that's the lowest over/under in like football history.
It is.
But anyway, let's go talk about the game. The number 2 ranked Ohio State Buckeyes traveling to the number 3 ranked Michigan Wolverines. We all know about the Michigan talk this year. We know Jim Harbaugh is not coaching this game. Sharon Moore versus Ryan Day. A lot of people have been saying, who has the coaching, advantage in this game? Is it Sharon Moore? And I think that's really disrespectful to Ryan Day. A lot of people saying, we were talking about this in the car yesterday. He was born on third base. He's possibly linked to the A&M job. What is he going to do? Ryan Day's a good coach. Don't get me wrong. He can recruit his brain off. He's a smart guy. He knows exactly what he wants out of his offense. But we haven't seen from Kyle McCord exactly what we thought we would see this season. Especially, you're looking at maybe the MVP frontrunner in the NFL right now who left your team in C.J. Stroud. But you also have to look on the flip side. We hadn't seen what we thought we were going to see from Michigan's quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, either. Going into the season, I think kind of everyone in college football circles pinned him as the number 1 quarterback in the Big Ten. Right now, Jake, I don't know who the number 1 quarterback is in the Big Ten. I don't know if it's either one of these guys. So, and I don't know if there really is a good quarterback in the Big Ten. So it's going to be interesting to see how these offenses play. Obviously, we know Ohio State's going to try as much as possible to get the ball in Marvin Harrison Jr.'s hands. That's their game plan. But can Ohio State's great defense this year continue to stop the run against, obviously, the best rushing attack they'll face all season in Michigan's Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards? That's where I'm really interested to see. I want to see this Michigan offense take on this Ohio State defense. I want to see how physical and for real they are. I don't know about you, but that's the matchup I'm watching this weekend. Sadly, won't be able to watch the game, but when I go back and rewatch the game or follow along on my phone, I think that will be the telltale sign of who wins this game.
Yeah. See, I get where you're coming from. I actually disagree. I think it's the exact opposite. I think it's going to be Ohio State's offense versus Michigan defense. This is a tale of two different sides for the last 3 to 4 games. Ohio State's been hot the last 3 to 4 games, take out the first half against Rutgers. And then Michigan's been pretty cold, especially over the last 2 games. Their offense been anemic. Penn State, they didn't throw the ball after 8 minutes left in the second quarter. Maryland, they struggled. Maryland had a chance to win that game and they just sold it. I'm interested to see how this Michigan defense stacks up against Ohio State's offense because this Ohio State defense is really, really good. They're top 3. I think they're number 3 in yards per game. And Michigan, their defense is number 1 in yards per game. But I don't see a way that Michigan can move the ball effectively because, I might just be a hater. I don't think Blake Corum is out of this world. Yeah, he has 20 touchdowns. He gets all those whenever they're on the 3-yard line. It's pretty much Jalen Hurts whenever they're on the 1. That's every single one of Jalen Hurts rushing touchdowns. It's just them doing the tush push. For Blake Corum, it's when they're on the 2 to the 3-yard line. He just runs it in. He doesn't get a ton of, breaks 3 tackles, scores from 25 yards out. I think it's just made by that O-line and, J.J. McCarthy's inability to throw touchdown passes. I know he has 18 on the year, but still, he has 0 in the last 3 games. So I'm more interested to see how this Ohio State offense moves the ball against Michigan's defense because we all know it. I don't think Marvin Harrison should win the Blitnikoff this year. I don't think he should be in the Heisman finalist, but he is really good, and he is the number 1 wide receiver in this class. So I want to see if he has the ability to take over when he is the only target on that field for either teams. I mean, because Michigan, they don't really have any targets. I mean, Roman Wilson, he's a fine wide receiver, but he's not a wide receiver one on a lot of playoff teams, on probably any playoff teams. Maybe Bama, but still, I don't know about that one. So I'm just interested. Can Marvin Harrison take over this game? And if they have a clue how to stop him, I think Michigan wins this game, but I don't think they can. I think Marvin Harrison is too good. And I think it's going to be his show, and especially Trey Henderson. He's getting fully healthy. I think he's going to be able to run the ball effectively. So I'm going to take Ohio State to cover and to win in this game.
Well, look, when I'm thinking about this game, I can't help but get the last 2 years out of my mind. And what's the narrative been in the last 2 years, Jake? That Michigan has been able to out-physical Ohio State. And this year, we've seen a different brand of Ohio State football. We've seen a lot more physical of a team. We saw it against Notre Dame. We saw it against Penn State. But we know, both of us know, that Michigan is a much more physical team than both Notre Dame and Penn State are. And I've just got to go with my gut. I've also got to go with these Michigan players, and you've got to think of this as a factor. Not only are they at home, but their head coach has been chastised all season. This will be the 7th game that he's been suspended for out of a 12-game season. So he will have been sitting at home on the couch more and watching his team play rather than on the sidelines. And we know that motivates the crap out of this team. I mean, it's evident just watching them in warm-ups with their shirts on, after the game when they go and watch the Michigan hockey team play. You can see they love and support their head coach. Obviously, who won't be there to, reap the backwards of the reward of all this crap that he's been doing. He's going to be found out, guilty for cheating, but regardless of what they find, this team is still going to support him. And I think that that's an extra motivation factor, not only them being at home, but this rivalry runs deep. Obviously, we're going to talk about rivalries a little bit later, so you guys buckle your seatbelts for that one. But I just got to go with my gut. I've got to go with history, being a history major. And I think Michigan is still just the more physical team. And I understand a quarterback really scares me in this game too, because I still think J.J. McCarthy is a better quarterback than Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord just has Marvin Harrison Jr. So I'm going to go with experience. I'm going to go with history. I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to go Michigan to win and Michigan to cover in this game. With their 3rd season in a row beating Ohio State, taking over the Big Ten 3 years in a row. And man, what is that going to say about Ryan Day if he loses this game, against a non-Jim Harbaugh Michigan team, a team that could be the worst team of the last 3 years that they've had potentially? I don't know what that says about him. Does he decide to leave and go to Texas A&M? Who knows? There have been rumors. But this is certainly a very interesting game, and I'm looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, it was so funny at the halftime of the Ole Miss Mississippi State game. It was they showed a preview for this game, and they showed a clip of Sharon Moore crying and saying something about we do this for Jim Harbaugh, and then they cut to Ryan Day talking after they beat Notre Dame, saying this is a tough team, and it was the funniest commercial I've ever seen in my life. Because I mean, I don't want to. Ryan Day, I don't think he's a clown. I think Sharon Moore's a clown. I mean, crying on national television after you beat Penn State when your coach got suspended. Whoop-de-doo. Why are you bawling like a baby?
I mean, big moment for him. That's a big moment for him. I mean,
I can understand that.
But give the guy a little slack. He puts his heart and soul into that team. I don't know. Maybe
put your heart and soul. Don't put your tears on national television.
Jake, if you got to be the head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs and you beat the number
that
9
is way different.
Country, he's a Michigan guy through and through. I don't think he ever thought he'd be the Michigan head coach.
Even so, he was crying for Jim Harbaugh. He wasn't crying for the win. I mean, he started crying.
I would be bawling my eyes out if I was the head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide for a game and we beat a ranked team. So, especially on the road, that was a big win. A lot of people did not believe in him. So I don't think really either one of them are clowns. I just think I don't really know what I think. To be honest, don't really care about either one of them. I'm excited to be able to watch this game and keep up with it on my phone a little bit while I'm in Auburn. But I know you have, although we'll be watching our high school team take on is it Jefferson tomorrow? I know you have a vested interest tomorrow night.
Yeah,
You,
tomorrow night you will see me on my phone because Oregon State play at 8:30. We'll definitely be able to catch the second half of this game. First half I'll probably have on my phone while we're there. Hopefully service is good. But I'm looking forward to this game. Line right now is 14, which is a lot of points to me. I get it, it's at Oregon, and I get it. Oregon State has 3 losses. They're coming off a loss to Washington. But I mean, these are two very, very similar teams. They're both physical, and Bo Nix has been really good, but their pass game doesn't jump off the table against good passing defenses. Against the Arizona States, against the Stanfords, yeah, Bo Nix is going to go crazy, but Bo Nix hasn't really impressed me whenever he's had to play against really good defenses, which really hasn't happened that often. I mean, maybe Utah, and I can't really think of another team. So I think Oregon State's going to do a pretty good job of containing Bo Nix. And although they're not really playing for anything at this point, this is still a big rivalry to them. I forget what this game is called, but I know they look forward to it
Civil War.
the Civil War. I know they look forward to it every single year. So I'm going to have Oregon State covering, but Oregon winning in this game. I just think it's going to be close through the whole game. And I think Oregon is going to control it for the most part. There's going to be chances where Oregon State can take the lead, and I don't think they're going to be able to do that because this Oregon team, they're really good. They're really physical. But Oregon State, they're physical themselves, and especially with Damian Martinez, who has shown out the last few games, especially last week against Washington. If DJU can play really well this game, they're going to find themselves with a chance to win it. I think that it's all going to be on him because Damian Martinez is going to get his. Their defense is going to play well. It's going to be up to DJU. And so, just with how good this Oregon defense is, and with Dan Lanning as their coach, a defensive mind, I don't think they're going to be able to get it done, but I am going to have them covering the 14.
Yeah, I think your analysis is pretty spot on. And I think another thing that kind of like the Michigan game where you can't really measure something, with their whole coaching situation, you can't really measure what this means, especially to the Oregon State football team and their players more specifically. Oregon joining the Big Ten next year. Oregon State and Wazoo have kind of been left out to dry. Not even Wazoo. It's Oregon State and
No, it is Wazoo.
Is it Wazoo? Oh yeah, it's not Cal. You're right. Oregon State and Wazoo have kind of been left out to dry. It looks like both of them are going to be joining the Mountain West. So the Civil War won't really be a rivalry after this year. So this is really Oregon State's last crack at being the Kings of Oregon for at least the time being. So I think they're going to be extra motivated to play in this game. Obviously, like you said, both teams, very similar teams. The way they play, the way they want to play on offense, the way they want to play on defense, how they stack up in terms of height, weight, all that good stuff. Very similar teams, but Oregon does have much more talent. They have the coaching, better coach with Dan Lanning. I do think Jonathan Smith is a really good coach and will, get another better job soon. But like you said, I've got Oregon as my third-ranked team in the country. I think they're one of the best teams. I think they will find their way to the playoff after beating Washington in the Pac-12 championship game a week from tomorrow, actually, in Las Vegas. So I do think Oregon will win. I do think Oregon State will cover, though. I think it'll be a close game. Like any other rivalry game, really good game. Oregon State will be on the road. If this game was at home, I would say upset alert. But I think this is going to be kind of similar to how I believe Alabama is going to play against Auburn. Oregon will have this game in hand pretty much the whole game. Oregon State will have shots, like you say, but I don't think they're going to make the most of them. So give me Oregon at home to win the game, but give me the Beavers to cover. We'll see how good both of our analysis was on those two games, but I don't know. Well, I think that rivalry mentality will really play in for the Beavers there.
Let's go down to Gainesville and talk about potentially and a very, very underrated game this week. The line is set at 6.5 right now, Florida State's way. This is
battle of the backup QBs.
I was about to say, I don't think they have a name for this game. This is the battle of the backup QBs this game. We're going with Tate Rodemaker from, I think, Valdosta, Georgia, and then Max Brown. Have no clue where he's from. But Max Brown, both QBs, after their starting QBs got hurt and went out for the season, played pretty well. FSU was down 13-0 when Tate Rodemaker came in and he brought them back. I get it. They were playing North Alabama. they suck, but still, I mean, they weren't doing anything for basically a whole half. As soon as he comes in, offense gets sparked up and they go and score and come back. And I think they scored 50 something unanswered. And then, I mean, very similar with Florida's offense. They were playing a much better team in Missouri with a good defense. Max Brown put them in position to win that game, and they arguably should have won it. He came in, he went like 4 for 5 with 50 yards and 42 rushing yards. So I mean, just from the little burst that we got from Max Brown, I mean, he has the chance to go in and, you know, upset all of Florida State Nation, all the Seminoles. So does it happen? I'm still going back and forth on this game, because if you would have told me Jordan Travis is out, Graham Mertz is in, I would say Florida is 100% upsetting. And honestly, the line might be way different. Florida might be favorited if Graham Mertz was in for this game. But with Graham Mertz out, I think it's going to be close. I'm actually going to have Florida. They're going to be winning the whole game. I think FSU puts on a game-winning drive, and when it counts, they scathe by and keep their undefeated season alive. But I mean, if Ricky Pearsall is true and what he texted Max Brown and said, number one's always open, he should have added in number one is always open unless you're facing Georgia, because he was clamped the whole game by Kamari Lassiter. But if what he says is true, they have a chance to win. But I mean, I just saw today, whoever FSU's corner is, he's number one in the nation when he's in press coverage. So if he's on Ricky Pearsall, good luck with that. But I mean, you're going to need your backs to do the work this game. And you're going to have to put yourselves in position to win with Max Brown's arm. So you're going to have to run to set up the pass. And I don't think they're going to be able to do it extremely well, but they will be winning this game, in my opinion, until the very end.
Man, like you, I've been going back and forth on this one as well. I like what I saw from Max Brown when he came in. And last year, I think Travis was kind of in a similar situation where he got hurt last year. And we saw some of Rodemaker last year, and Rodemaker looked really good. So I think FSU definitely is in good hands with him as the future of their program after this season. But I've been to Gainesville and seen a game there. 2021, I was there for the Alabama-Florida game. That place, when it gets rocking, it's a tough place to play. I mean, it is a very tough place to play. Alabama almost lost that game. I think it was the third game of the season. Bryce Young's first true road start. And Florida, man, they had it rocking. I'm going to go with the Gators. Just some way, somehow, I think the Gators are going to win this game. I think Max Brown becomes a Florida Gator legend after this weekend. We'll see what ends up happening. I think obviously Florida State's a much more talented team in this game, a lot better at receiver, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, obviously the running back, Trey Benson, who hasn't been as big as I thought he would be for their team this season, but they haven't needed him to be. I mean, they hadn't played anybody, so I think Florida and that crowd is the difference. Also, I think Billy Napier, a team that's 5-6 right now, is going to have this team motivated to be in a bowl game. Obviously, he needs it just as much as he would, as his teammates, or excuse me, his players want it to be able to be in a bowl game and play for their coach. Obviously, a great recruiter, but hasn't been able to get it done on the field in his first couple seasons at Florida. But I think he maybe has a cornerstone here this upcoming weekend. They just, as a program, they maybe turn a corner. Obviously, a tough schedule next season, but who knows? When you get your recruits in there and you get your guys experience playing the way you want them to play, things can happen. So I think Florida is going to win this game. I predict a Florida over Florida State upset. And I think there's just some part of me that's telling me Florida State is going to lose before the playoff. So if they don't lose this weekend, I think they lose next weekend to the team that we're about to preview. So before I go on to this game.
Well, I was going to say real quick, I hope you're right, because I know both of us, this is the first weekend ever I'm cheering for Florida, because it helps both of us out. If Georgia potentially loses against Bama, there's a chance we get in, but FSU kind of has to lose one of these games. And I mean, even if Bama wins, there's not 100% certainty they're getting in. I think there is, but obviously if it's between Texas and Bama, it's hard to not favor the head-to-head for the number 4 spot. But if FSU loses, I think whoever – if Bama wins that game, I think they're locked to get in. I think it helps Georgia a whole lot if FSU loses this game.
Yeah, and so I'm going to have Florida winning, Florida covering, obviously. But let's go to the last game we'll preview just real quick. It's the Battle of the State of Kentucky. The Kentucky Wildcats traveling to the 10th-ranked Louisville Cardinals. Obviously, Louisville locked in that ACC championship spot against Florida State upcoming next weekend. So the Cardinals still have a lot to play for. I mean, they still, I mean, a lot would have to happen, Jake, for them to sneak in the playoffs this year. A whole lot would have to happen. But Jeff Brom, his first season, if they end up going 12-1 with an ACC championship, I don't think anybody would saw that coming in the country. I mean, and I think Louisville fans have to be some of the happiest fans in college football right now with the way their season has turned out. Obviously, a really easy schedule coming in, and we've kind of talked about that the last few weeks. But don't take Kentucky lightly. I mean, both of us have played them this year. We obviously both of our teams won real big against them, but we know that what they've been in the SEC. They're a very physical team that's presented some challenges for teams, especially running the football and up front. You know, they got big O linemen, big D linemen that play well. Got some pretty solid linebackers, and they run the football really well with Ray Davis. And Devin Leary has kind of come on towards the end of the season, really until he played Alabama. So maybe Devin Leary can have some flashbacks of his time at NC State, where he did play in the ACC and played against some of these guys at Louisville. Does he have enough playmakers on the outside to win this game? Can Devin Leary out-battle Jack Plummer? I think Devin Leary's a better quarterback than Jack Plummer is. I think if Kentucky has just as good, talent on the outside as Louisville does, I think it really just comes down to coaching in this game. Home field advantage obviously is baked in, but I think this Louisville season is kind of like a Cinderella story almost for a college basketball team who's going in, Sweet 16 possibly. I think that's just kind of what they are. I'm going to go. What's the line on this game? I'm going to go Kentucky. I'm going to go Kentucky to cover the game, but I think Louisville's going to win a close one at home against Kentucky. Kentucky's going to make it look like a really good game, and they're a good team. They're going to get up for their rivalry game. But Louisville, just kind of the Cinderella story of college football this season with the first-year head coach. So I'm going to say Kentucky's going to cover, but I think Louisville wins the game. Yeah,
we've seen this year Louisville wipe the floor, not even wipe the floor, just skate by all the ACC teams, and we know how bad the ACC is, and we know how good
they beat up on Notre Dame. They did beat up on Notre Dame.
That is fair. I think Notre Dame was kind of looking ahead of that game because, I mean, you had who was it? Ohio State the week before, and I think USC the week after. So that was kind of a sandwich game in there as well. And we've seen Louisville ended up being better than USC, but still at the time you're really looking forward to that USC team. But this Kentucky team, they're 10th in the SEC. But, I mean, if they were in the ACC, they'd probably be a top 3 team, especially with Mark Stoops as their coach. I think Mark Stoops is top 20, underrated, top 25 coach in the whole game because what he's done at Kentucky is kind of insane. Kentucky, that is not a winning program. I think Florida had like a 25-game win streak against them, and now it's a 3-game win streak for Kentucky. Tennessee, I think theirs is still going, and it's like 35 or something, and Georgia's is like 25, maybe less than that. Anyway, this is not a winning program, and what he's done there, he was able to lead them to a New Year's Six Bowl and beat Penn State a couple of years ago. He's led them to 10-plus win seasons, I think, 3 times. So just insane. And I think you're right. This is going to come down to coaching. And I get Jeff Brahms had a good year at Louisville, but I don't think he compares to Mark Stoops. I think Mark Stoops is a really, really good coach, and he's going to have his team ready. And I think he's going to, kind of treat it as their Super Bowl, just because you have the chance to go into the number 10 team's house and upset them and kind of destroy their season as well. And especially because it's not like when you have to go into, you get Bama, or when you have to go in and do it to Georgia. I mean, Louisville, I get it, they're a top 10 team, but they are not talented like either one of those teams. This is a very feasible thing to do. And I think they're going to be able to do it. I think Kentucky obviously covers. I don't think Louisville wins by more than 8. I'm going to have Kentucky winning I'm going to say a last-minute field goal. I think Devin Leary leads them down the field. Actually, no, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to have Devin Leary throws a touchdown, and Louisville is going to be in a 2-minute drill, and their defense is going to come up huge. I'm going to have Kentucky winning the game. So I want to see that upset.
I could see either one happening. I mean, but like my prediction, I could see your prediction happening. That's the beauty of rivalry weekends. It's the best. It really is the best weekend in college football, week 13. So obviously can't wait to watch all these games and more. I'll be in Auburn live on hand for the Iron Bowl. Jake will actually probably get to watch a lot of these games from back home.
Oh, I will. It's going to be so great.
Watch them all for both of us, but we'll definitely have much to talk about next week in our review section. But let's go ahead and move on to our Week 12 uh-ohs from last week. I think both of mine and both of yours are kind of pretty feasible in what we're going to talk about So I'll just start off with the Auburn Tigers. Obviously, don't want to, talk too much crap about them before the Alabama game, but obviously, if you're going to lose to a non-Power 5 team at your own place, pay them $1.85 million. Losing to New Mexico State 31-10, getting beaten in just every facet of the game, out physicaled in every facet of the game with superior talent. I mean, it's just really embarrassing for the Auburn team. So they're definitely a Week 12. Like I said, I'll leave it there because Alabama's still got to go out and do their job, and it's still very much a chance Alabama can lose this weekend. So, we'll see what Auburn does. Can they turn the tide, or do they keep kind of, going down in that valley, their trajectory of that program? So we'll see what Coach Hugh Freeze does this upcoming weekend. But, it definitely doesn't look good when you're paying a team millions of dollars and then you're going to lose to them at home. So, yeah.
I don't even know if you caught yourself. You said, can they turn the tide? I don't know if you meant to do that. That was kind of punny.
Oh, wow. Poetic.
Yeah. But my number one team, they were on this list twice already, but they haven't been on it in, I think, 4 or 5 weeks. It's USC. I mean, I said we should probably keep this to like a 2-week thing, but I didn't anticipate them losing to UCLA by 18, who had already said their coach was in a hot seat. I don't know if he still is. I haven't really seen anything about it since then. But this is kind of it's not even an team. I think this is just for Lincoln Riley, because we've talked about it. I think they have the wrong coach on the hot seat, and I get it. I mean, you have a bad defense, but I mean, that really comes down to you, because I get it if you tried to hire a good defensive coordinator, if you went out and tried to get, I mean, I'm sure they did try, but you didn't get any good defensive freshmen. I mean, they got a couple of portal pieces, but I've seen Brooks Austin talk about it. I mean, all the defenses you can see good teams put together through the portal. I mean, LSU's kind of done it with Jaden Daniels in their offense, and Washington's done the same thing. But you can't really do that on defense. I think it's just because their defenses are more complex and they have to play together more as a team. So just going into the portal, and you can get a couple of good pieces, but you can't build your team around that on the defensive side, at least. And so he hasn't done enough to try to solidify that defensive spot. And maybe he does it this offseason, but I mean, it's been 7 or 8 years of this, where even at Oklahoma, he had no defense. So I think he just doesn't care about defense. I think he's just hell-bent on scoring more points. But I don't think he's realized you have to keep them below a certain number as well. So, I mean, this just for Lincoln Riley. If they lose whatever bowl they're in, I mean, it's just going to go more downhill after that, because next year you're not going to have Caleb Williams on your team. You're not going to have some of these wide receivers. So I just don't see a way that they've remained good.
Yeah, I don't think I could have said it better than myself. When you said USC, I was going to say, if you just kept talking about the team, I was going to correct you and say Lincoln Riley is the but you said it perfectly. So, and I think both of our last two teams kind of tie together. I'm going to go with Florida. Obviously, losing Graham Mertz, big deal, especially for this upcoming week. And this is kind of Billy Napier, as well. I mean, he's a great recruiter, but hasn't really been able to put it together on the football field so far. And that's where it matters, right? 5-6 this season. They desperately need this win against Florida State, not only to spoil their big-time rival season, but to just be bowl eligible. I mean, that's a big deal in the SEC when you aren't bowl eligible. And I get, in the NIL transfer portal era, the era where you got a really big-time player, they want to sit out this game, but it still means a lot to fan bases when you get to represent your school in a bowl game. So big weekend upcoming, a game that I thought really slipped away from them last week against Missouri. Should have won that game, but just weren't able to come up with enough plays down the stretch, especially on defense there. I mean, it was just horrible to watch their defense, try to attack Luther Burden and Brady Cook there on that last drive. But, needs a big one this upcoming weekend with a backup quarterback. I predicted them to do it. Now they need to go out and actually execute it on the field. So we'll see what happens. But for right now, they're on the list, I think, for maybe the 3rd time this year.
Yeah. And speaking of USC, this last team is very similar to them, because this is going to be the second time that the second time that I put a team that won last week on the list, because the last one was USC. So I'm 1 for 1. That team ended up being a huge I'm going to have FSU, and it's not for the same exact reason. I think FSU is still a really good team. I think they're top 10, even without Jordan Travis. But I mean, you were almost, I don't want to say an absolute lot, because you still had to beat Florida, who's a decent team, and you still had to beat Louisville, who's a decent team. But you had the straightest path to the playoff out of any single team. So I mean, I don't want to say you sold that because you can't really help him getting injured. But I mean, it's just tough luck for you because I get it. Tate Rodemaker played well last year when he had to come in, but obviously he's not going to be as good as Jordan Travis. And they definitely still have pieces. They still have Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson on that defensive side. Like I talked about, I think the corner's name is Jaron Jackson, Jaron something. And then obviously Jared Verse, he's been really great. But I mean, it just sucks for them because it just makes their path to the playoffs so much harder. And it's still straight, still the straightest out of anyone.
Yeah.
Because you're going to be
It's the easiest out of anybody.
Oh, 100%. But I mean, you have the worst quarterback out of everyone, out of all the playoff contenders. So it just sucks for them. I mean, if they can do it, huge props to them. They deserve to be in the playoff, but I just don't know if they'll be able to.
Or so we think. Like I said, I watched Rodemaker play last year. He looked really good. So he could come out and surprise us.
Very well could end up being better than Kyle McCord or JJ McCarthy. Wouldn't be too hard, honestly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But let's go ahead and skip over to our top. We're going to give our top 5 rivalries in college football. And I actually thought it was kind of there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of ways you can kind of take this. I was doing it just in general, historically speaking, what I think is the most prevalent ones, which I want to watch every year. You know, maybe not what's been the best in terms of recently, but also had to go honorable mentions. And I like doing this not only because it's rivalry weekend, but we're losing some of these rivalries in the coming months, the coming years, which obviously we don't want to do. We saw one play out tonight, and I think we'll mention them both ways. But I actually have 2 honorable mentions I'm going to start with. I think you have one before we get into our list of 5. And, we like to go 5 to 1 or, lowest to highest. But I'm going to go ahead and give out both my honorable mentions before you do yours. And this is so sad because this is one that I think is really good. And we saw it this year was awesome. But this was the last one we're going to have for a long time. And that's Bedlam, Oklahoma State. I mean, we saw Oklahoma State kind of shock the country. Oklahoma lost 2 weeks in a row, one to Texas, one Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State ends up winning the game towards the end of that game. They stormed the field. I mean, it truly was. It's a crazy game every time they play, no matter how good both teams are. And that's just perfect rivalry, right? So Bedlam for me is an honorable mention. Didn't quite make the top 5. And then I've got to pay my dues in respects to Army Navy. I don't have them in the top 5 because to me, this game just has never had really any implications on it. I'm a very patriotic person, love my country, love America.
Doesn't sound like it. Doesn't sound like it.
I don't put them in the top 5 doesn't mean that. But let's be honest with each other. This game every year, I watch the first quarter because I like to see the flyover. I like to see the tradition of the Army and the Navy on each side of the field. But this game is always very boring because it's always, the triple option offense is really good defense, is low scoring. It's never really a fun game to watch. And neither team are ever up for, playoff implications or top 25 implications. They don't have, they have history in terms of them playing each other, but they don't have just great history that I truly care about on the football field side of things. Obviously, as a history nerd, love what they're doing on the battlefield, but on the football field, not as much. So, but they are an honorable mention for me, for sure. They deserve to be somewhere near that top 5, but just don't quite make it for me.
Yeah. The one honorable mention I have is the Egg Bowl. The game played out today. I think it's really cool how it's played on Thanksgiving Day. And obviously there's always some fighting, some jawing. The only reason why it's not in my top 5 is one, I feel like there's never huge implications. It's always one team being really good or the other team. It's never, a playoff spot, a New Year's Six Bowl. They have a chance to play spoiler. I mean, Mississippi State had the chance to play spoiler on Ole Miss and take them out of a New Year's Six Bowl. They ended up not doing that. But it's never both teams going at it. But the one thing, boosting it up to an honorable mention is that they always play hard. It's kind of similar to the Iron Bowl as of late. Auburn sucks this year. Bama's really good. That doesn't mean it's going to be an absolute blowout, especially playing at Jordan-Hare. So it's the same exact thing where Ole Miss is good this year. Mississippi State sucks. They were playing at Mississippi State's place, and they had a chance to win. Their offense sucks this year, so they kind of blew it away. But I mean, they're always going to play it hard. So I enjoyed watching it. But I'll go ahead and give my top 5.
Let me go ahead and do my 5. Let me do my number 5 because I have the Egg Bowl at number 5.
Sure.
And I just kind of wanted to play off what you said there. And yeah, I think, like you said, obviously biases are going to sneak into our list. But, living so close to Ole Miss and Mississippi State, pretty much my whole life from Georgia, from Alabama, I experienced their fans a lot. So I know how big that rivalry is to them. It's very similar to Alabama-Auburn. I wouldn't say the hatred runs quite as deep, but for sure, both teams hate each other on and off the field. Like you said, not crazy implications every year. I mean, every now and again, you get a really good Ole Miss team, you get a really good Mississippi State team. Like this year, you had a really good Ole Miss team, but a really bad Mississippi State team. A few years back when Mississippi State had Dak Prescott, you had really good Mississippi State teams and okay Ole Miss teams. Those were some of the best years, though, when they had Hugh Freeze and when Dan Mullen was kind of at his height and Starkville. That's what I really remember. And then obviously it being on Thanksgiving Day, being the only college football game on Thanksgiving Day, always have memories of eating Thanksgiving food like I did tonight. And then, walking into my grandparents' living room and being able to watch the game. I watch it every Thanksgiving. I watch the whole game every Thanksgiving. So I watch it. Besides the Iron Bowl, that's probably the second most rivalry I watch every year, just because it's kind of a tradition that we have, even though we don't pull for either team. So for me, that's why it's so significant and special to me, is because I have a connection to it, I think. And I have to put it on my list at number 5 for that reason.
Sure. Yeah, my number 5. And again, this is historical. It's not right now, because if this was top 5 games played this weekend, this would be number 1. It's the game, Michigan, Ohio State. I get it. It's a hyped up rivalry, especially as of late, the last 5 years. But before that, I mean, and maybe it's because we live in the South, I don't remember anyone ever talking about it, because Michigan was not all that great before 2021. They were a good team. And I know they were really good, like while we were born, late 90s, early 2000s, but really since I started watching college football, they weren't extremely relevant. Ohio State's pretty much always been, especially since like 2010, around that time. And before we were born, they were really good. But I mean, the reason it's carrying into the top 5 is just how significant it is as of late, with both teams being really, really good, extremely dominant, and also kind of looking towards the future. I think this one's going to stay up there and it's going to grow. Some of the other games I think are going to potentially drop out, but just how good these teams are now, I think it's deserving of a number 5 spot.
Yeah, I actually have them a lot higher, obviously. But for number 4 for me, I've got the world's largest cocktail party, Georgia versus Florida. And we know, like, kind of similar with Ole Miss, Mississippi State, during the early, like, 2010s, when both Florida and Georgia were really good, when Urban Meyer was there, when Mark Richt was there, this was always a great game, great fun game to watch. And it still is, even to this day. I mean, they've had a few good years now and then. 2020 was a great year for them. And obviously Georgia has come on really strong these past few years with Kirby Smart. But I still think once Florida becomes a really good program again, obviously Kirby's going to continue to do what he does, especially with the NIL transfer portal age. It's just a matter of time before I think Florida really gets it going again. This will might even shoot up my list a little bit more. So yeah, it's obviously a really cool tradition of it being in Jacksonville. I know personally, I'd rather it be at both campuses, because I think it'd be better environments for the game. But there's a lot of tradition there, a lot of hatred across state lines there. I know, living in Georgia, obviously not a Georgia or Florida fan, but I know how much this one means to you and Georgia fans. And obviously I know how much it means to your family as well, being Florida fans. And, I have some Florida friends myself too. So I know how big of a deal this is, as an observer. It's always a game I watch. It's kind of cool that it's a rivalry game that kind of falls in the middle of the season as well. So teams are usually kind of in the same spots as in the middle of the year. Still a whole lot to play for, whereas the end of the year, your season and your year's kind of been determined for the most part. So that's another reason why I think this game is pretty unique and why I like it. And that kind of also goes with my 3rd ranked team, but I'll talk about them in a second. But yeah, world's largest cocktail party, number 4.
Yeah, that's my number 4 as well. And I think it would be top 3 if it wasn't played at a neutral site. I really hate how it's played in Jacksonville. And also, I mean, I've been to that game. I mean, I had never gone to a Georgia game until my sophomore year of high school. I don't know. It was a Tennessee-Georgia game, first time ever. But this game I've been to all 4 years of college. Doesn't disappoint, even though it's in Jacksonville. I hate that place. I wish it was a home and home, though. It would just mean so much more, because I know Gainesville is rocking and I haven't been able to go there. I wish I could. And then especially when they came into Sanford would be rocking. I think that would be the loudest it's ever been if we had Florida at home, no matter if they're good or bad. And yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm a Georgia fan. I grew up a diehard Georgia fan. My family are Florida fans. And so this one just meant a whole lot to me. Growing up, there's not a team I hate more than Florida. If I meet one of their fans, I instantly hate them. Love my family, but hate them whenever this game comes. Because me, Nick, and then me and Ryan, we always talk trash for this game. In the last few years, it hasn't really been the same. I know they beat us in 2020 when they were really good. But the 3 years before that, we destroyed them. And the 3 years since then, we've destroyed them. So I think we're 6-1 since Kirby came in. Maybe 6-2, maybe 7-1. I don't know the exact of it, but ever since he got here and we turned really good, and Florida kind of went downhill once they got Dan Mullen, the clown, and everyone else. They just haven't been great. But I mean, still, I look forward to this game every single year. Look forward to going down to Jacksonville and seeing some Florida fans and barking in their faces and them chomping in my faces and our faces. So, I mean, I love this game. It means a lot to me. I wish it could be top 3, but the other 3 games I just can't top.
Yeah, so for me, number 3, try saying this 5 times, the Red River Rivalry, or better known, the Red River Shootout between Texas and Oklahoma. Not only is it played at an iconic venue, and this is one kind of where Jacksonville, I'd rather it being played on, the campus grounds. I like the venue for this. The Cotton Bowl in Dallas doesn't get much better. The fair is the state fair is there as well when this game's going on. Another game that's in the middle of the season. This year, obviously, huge implications. Not a lot of people thought Oklahoma was going to win that game, but they ended up winning the game against Texas. And maybe if some stuff happens, we can see a rematch in the Big 12 championship game in another weekend. But every year, no matter how these teams are, really besides last year when Oklahoma didn't have a quarterback for this game, it's always a very competitive game. A lot of offense scored. So that's why it's called the Red River Shootout. A lot of people call it that. Just because it's back and forth offense, very exciting game. Obviously, both rich histories, a lot of money in both sides, great coaches on both sides, great players. We've seen a lot of the Big 12 has pretty much ran through Texas and Oklahoma, the last 20, 30 years. So now that both of them aren't going to be in there, I think this rivalry just continues to get better and better, especially with the SEC involved. Not only are there going to be better players on both sides, but there's going to be more money involved as well. And we'll still continue to see this rivalry year in and year out. It's only going to get better. Shoot, it could climb up the list. Who knows? But yeah, for me, Texas Oklahoma has always been a fun game that I love watching in the middle of the season. And this year it was no different.
Yeah. I mean, I wish Georgia Florida was played in Dallas. It would be so much different. I would love going every single year. But I mean, my number 3, I'm not going to talk about it too much. It's the Iron Bowl. I mean, great game. A lot of history, especially with, playing at Jordan Hare, not as much in Bryant-Denny, but so much at Jordan Hare. The kick 6, even Georgia, when they go in there, they had the miracle in Jordan Hare. Just crazy. I mean, I hated that moment. But I mean, like I said, I'm not going to talk about it too much, especially because we've been talking about it. We're going to talk about it on the next show. I mean, there's a lot of history, and we'll see if any magic can happen this weekend.
Yeah, so for me, number 2 is the game, Ohio State, Michigan. You talked about it a lot. And, as of recent, it's been the most competitive one, maybe besides Texas, Oklahoma. But, this game is huge for the people up north. Obviously, I don't think you or I will ever really truly understand how big of a game it is because of where we're from, where we live. But I know just from looking at message boards and watching the game how much it means to everyone there. I mean, Ohio State fans won't even refer to Michigan as Michigan. They just call them the team up north. So, yeah, I mean, I know the hatred runs deep there. Obviously, I've seen, interactions between Dave Portnoy and other Ohio State fans. They're always hilarious. And obviously, these two teams, great teams as of late, great head coaches, great players, lots of hatred on both sides. It's a great rivalry. And, and it means, I mean, when a coach does not win that game for many years, that coach could go 12-1, but if he loses that game, he's going to get fired because if he does it too many times, because literally that game matters so much to them. And it's just like the Iron Bowl, which I'm sure everyone guessed is my number one rivalry, but I'll talk about that next. But yeah, the game, you said it perfectly earlier. Huge one. And I think it could continue to grow. But I think where it is right now and kind of where my top 3 are right now, I don't think anything will change kind of my entire lifetime. I mean, I think these 3 games where I have them ranked are the best.
Yeah. My number 2, you already talked about it, Red River. So, I mean, hopefully we get to see a rematch of that. That'll be sick. Is that still in Dallas where they play?
It'll be in Dallas at the Cotton Bowl. Yep.
Then they get 2 of those in one season. That'd be sick. But I don't think there's a single game where players hate the other team as much. I mean, Oklahoma players, two of their players got horns down tattoos on them this year, which is kind of funny. They got it on their legs, so when they look at it, it's horns up. Don't really get, I mean, I get the message, but I think they kind of played themselves when they got it. But still, I don't think there's another team doing that. You see it in coaches, you see it in players, obviously you see it in fans. These teams hate each other. And I think most other teams, they have mutual respect. I don't think there is any on that side. So there's always going to be a fight every single time, no matter what. So I love the rivalry of that game.
Well, I can tell you there's a lot of hatred on the Iron Bowl side coming from me. I hate two teams in college football. I've talked about this. It's Auburn and Tennessee. Auburn up here and Tennessee is down here below them, but it's a considerable gap between both. Obviously,
Tennessee fans are way worse than Auburn fans. Auburn fans are great. Love
growing up,
Auburn.
no.
Tennessee fans,
45 minutes from Auburn, I think ruined it for me. Just because as a Bama fan, 45 minutes from Auburn, almost everyone is either Auburn or Georgia fans. Predominantly Auburn, growing up in schools here. So I've always had it thrown my way, especially 2013. I've only ever cried myself to sleep once, Jake Osteen, and that was the kick six 10 years ago from 2 days from now. So hopefully I won't be crying myself to sleep 10 days to the day of me crying myself to sleep only once ever. So, but yeah, lots of hatred on this side. I mean, the only time that I ever think of that, that both fan bases came together was when Tuscaloosa had a tornado in 2011, I believe. The Auburn football team actually got on a bus and came to Tuscaloosa and helped, Alabama's football team clean up the town. A lot of people died. It was a really bad thing, but it was I remember being like, wow, that was a great, scene of sportsmanship from the Auburn University. I think Alabama would do the same if it was to them. I mean, there is a little bit of level of respect for what both sides do, but once football is kicked off and once every humanitarian thing is out of the way, it's nothing but hatred. And I tell you what, I hate them. I absolutely hate them. I think rolling the trees is the dumbest thing ever. I'm not by any stretch of the matter saying what Harvey Updike did to their trees by poisoning them was something that I'm approving of. I definitely don't think. I think that was stupid. But also, I think you shouldn't put a Cam Newton jersey around Paul Bear Bryant's statue. I mean, he's one of the best.
don't compare those two things. Do not compare those two.
That's our thing, though. That's our thing. That's our statues are our thing. Their trees are theirs. We have ours. They have theirs. So I know this. Some people in Africa could probably be using the toilet paper that that they're wasting every year. But or people somewhere around the world that are suffering. That's just kind of how I look at it. That's just a funny way to look at it. But yeah, I mean, I do not like Auburn at all. Hate them. So it'll be very interesting to see, exactly what happens this upcoming weekend. But like I said, I think there's no more hatred. There's no better memories than games like this. And honestly, this is a rivalry that wasn't played for like 20 years because Alabama and Auburn before like 1970 played every year in Birmingham. At kind of Alabama played half of their games in Birmingham, half in Tuscaloosa. So it was basically a home game every year for Alabama until 1970 when Auburn said, we want games on our campus. And Alabama said no. And so for 20 years, they didn't play. And then finally they agreed to play. And since like the mid 1990s, we've had home and homes against them. So to me, it's the best rivalry in college football. Obviously, I'm biased towards it, but it never fails to disappoint in my opinion.
Yeah, my number one, not so much on the football field, but just the history of it. Army Navy. I mean, and also this might be where my bias comes out. My dad served 25 plus years in the Army. So there's always a team I'm rooting for in this game. Always Army, hate Navy, love Navy, hate them on the field. Always cheering for Army. And also, I think kind of what you said about Georgia, Florida playing in the middle of the year. Not a lot of teams do that. Not a lot of rivalries do that. This game is always played the week after all the conference championships. And so it's the only college football game on. And so you're kind of forced to watch it. And I get it. It's not the greatest game on the field. The flyover is always cool. And these teams talk about mutual respect. I mean, obviously they respect each other so much. And they're friends off the field, but on the field, I mean, hard hits, always defensive games. I think it's fun to watch. I get it. It can be boring. But I don't love today's offense anyway. Just putting up, I don't love watching a game like LSU Ole Miss that score every single drive in 2 minutes. I like seeing some defense. And even though these teams, I don't think Army does anymore, but I know Navy still runs the triple option. Army does. Either way, still fun to watch, and just I'm a Patriot, so love watching this game. Love it. Go Army. Beat
America. America,
America every single year.
All right. Well, definitely saw a lot of similarities there, but different rankings. But that's a good thing. Obviously, there are great rivalries in college football. But let's close, the show out on some best bets here. I've got 3 games and I've got 3 over-unders. I think you've got 3 games and 3 player props.
I've got 4 games and 3 player props. I got 7 bets.
Sweet. So I'm going to start off with my lock of the week. My lock of the week is Auburn covering the 14 against Alabama. I think it's going to happen. I still think Alabama wins, but just the way that rivalry has always been played in the past, especially at Jordan-Hare, I think that's kind of a gimme for me this weekend. Sure, Alabama could go absolutely destroy them this weekend. I would love nothing more than that. Believe me, after just talking about the Iron Bowl, but I think Auburn's going to keep it close. But like I said earlier, a game Alabama's in control of pretty much the whole time, but Auburn, covers.
Yeah, I gave mine. I think Bama covers the 14. So my lock of the week, I'm going with my team as well, but not to cover the spread. I'm going with UJ at Georgia Tech over 58.5. I think is it 9? 59.5. Sorry. Obviously, Georgia's going to have no problem moving the ball against Georgia Tech. We'll just see how much Carson Beck plays. I don't think he plays into the 4th. I think he'll put up 49 points or so. And I think Georgia Tech's going to have a tiny bit of success scoring the ball. They might score 17, but not a whole lot. This is a good offense. They are a good offense. So I think that's the important thing to know. It's not just going to be, like it is every year where you immediately stop them every single time, and it wouldn't be Georgia putting up the 60. So I think, Georgia Tech's going to, assist 10 points or so, 10 to 17 points. Georgia's going to do the rest and cover.
Yeah, I'll take Georgia to cover as well. But another game I've got.
Are you taking
over? Excuse me, over. Sorry. Another game I've got: Texas Tech versus Texas. Texas is a 12.5 point favorite. It's a game that we didn't review, but last year Texas Tech was able to beat Texas at home. Obviously, Texas had a backup quarterback. This was during the Quinn Ewers injury. Quinn Ewers is back. This Texas team has vengeance and revenge in mind, especially if all they got to do is take care of business. They'll be in the playoff. So I'm going to go Texas to win, Texas to cover. I think they win this game pretty emphatically against a Texas Tech team that hasn't had much success this season. So Texas will cover the 12.5 against Texas Tech.
I was about to say, what's the line on it? Yeah, Big 12 is bad outside of Texas and Oklahoma. Even Oklahoma's not that great. So, like I said last week, I don't know why everyone was hyping up Texas, Iowa State. I didn't think it was going to be close. Texas covered that game. Not super easily, but they did. I think it's going to be the same thing. I just don't know why Texas have these lines so close. I think that says a lot about their team and what Vegas thinks of them. So I have Texas covering, not by much though, probably by like 14 or 17. And then one of my other games, I have Mizzou at Arkansas. This might be a trap game because Mizzou's a really, really good team. Arkansas is a really, really bad team. It's only minus 7.5. I get it's being played at Arkansas, but that's not great home field advantage. So I'm going to have Mizzou covering the 7.5.
Yeah, I'll go Mizzou covering as well. Actually, I just saw an over-under that has already happened. I had the Ole Miss Mississippi State under. I had this earlier in the week when we made our show sheet. The over-under in that game was set at 55.5. And obviously the final scores was 17-7. So that severely hit the under. So yeah, I had Ole Miss Mississippi State under. So that's already hit. So I'm already 1 for 1 on the weekend.
I guess you just have to trust me. I would have said under for that too. I would have thought that line would be like 44.5, 45.5. That is a lot of points.
Yeah, that's a lot of points. Mississippi State scored.
I know. I was about to say I would have thought Ole Miss would have to put up all of those points, and if that line did hit, they would have, because Mississippi State's offense is really bad. So that's kind of surprising. I would have hammered that. My other one is Iowa at Nebraska, not the over under, because 24.5. I think the under is going to hit, but that's just crazy. I would never do that. I'm going to have Iowa covering the 2.5. It's kind of crazy. The plus 2.5. It's kind of crazy that Nebraska is favored. Iowa's a bad team. I don't know why they're ranked 16.
Hmm.
They cannot be ranked 16 and be underdogs against Nebraska. That makes no sense to me. They're not a top 25 team, but I mean, I think their momentum's going to carry them. They're going to have a lot of momentum going into the Big Ten championship and going to get destroyed by whoever wins the game. But I think Iowa's going to cover.
Yeah, I think Iowa's going to win and cover as well. And funny you mentioned the over-under in that game. That is actually one of my bets, the over-under.
Wow.
I have Iowa and Nebraska over 24.5 points. I think they get it. I think the final score in this game is going to be like 17-14 or 17-13 or something like that. So I do think the over is going to hit.
There is no reason that should be a best bet. But I'm going to go
so low.
I'm going under. I don't think an over has hit a single time for them this season. Maybe once against a bad opponent. But yeah, I'm going under just because this game might be 7-0. This game might be 3-0. It might be 2-0. Might just be a safety, and that might be all the scoring. So, I mean, Nebraska's offense sucks. Their defense is pretty decent. So Iowa's not going to be able to move the ball. Nebraska's not going to be able to move the ball. They're going to have to rely on like a pick six or something. My last game line is Jacksonville State at New Mexico State. And again, this might be a trap line after New Mexico State's win against Auburn, but New Mexico State, they were a good team going into that game. That's just how that game played out. New Mexico State, they're only favorites by 1.5. So I'm going to have them covering.
I'm going to go Jacksonville State on the road. I've actually picked them a few times in our pick 'em this year, and they've done well for me. So I'm gonna ride.
They're a good team too.
I'm gonna go Cox, baby. I'm gonna ride the Cox. So actually, whoa, no.
Nope, you said it.
Oh, whoa.
I'm gonna clip that.
We'll have to take that out of the show. Okay. So Jacksonville State, I've got them winning. All right, my last game. Oh. Yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to live that one down. Okay, Texas A&M versus LSU is my last game. I've got LSU is favored by 11.5, and I'm going to ride with the Tigers. I think the Tigers are going to win. I think, obviously, we saw it a lot last game against Georgia State, Jake, where they left Jaden Daniels in the game for a long time, really just to bolster his Heisman campaign, I think, statistically speaking. And I think they're going to do a lot of passing in this game, a lot of bolstering that Heisman resume, because this will be the last game that he has before the Heisman ceremony. So really his last impression will be this game. And I think he's going to have a really good and lasting impression. I think they're going to put up a ton of points. And honestly, probably should have picked this as an over-under. So if you're listening, whatever the over-under is in this game, I would put the over. But I think LSU is going to win this game, and I think they're going to cover as well. And it's going to be because of Jaden Daniels. Could be probably his last regular season college game, and maybe even his last college game in general. He may decide to sit out the bowl game. So
you said it's 11.5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna go A&M to cover the 11.5. I think Jaden Daniels is gonna have a great game. Gonna have like 400 all-purpose yards, I think. And I think LSU wins. But A&M, I think they're playing with more fire now that they know Jimbo's gone, because that dude sucks as a coach. So is he still coaching them though for the rest of the season? Jimbo?
No, they got to enter him.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah, whoever their interim is, I think they're going to play hard for him. And also LSU, they don't have a shred of defense. So I think you kind of just have to try to match their scoring. I don't think they're going to do it exactly with how bad their defense is. I think they're going to hang in there.
It is noteworthy though that A&M is playing a third string quarterback that has had some success in the last couple of weeks. Obviously Max Johnson and Wegman out for the rest of the year. So they're going with the third string guy who's lefty, who's had a pretty good couple games. So,
also, I mean, against LSU's defense, I don't think that matters that much. Yeah, but speaking of that game, my player prop, I have Jaden Daniels 320.5 over. Like I said, I think he's going to have a tremendous game. They're going to try to bolster his Heisman. I think if they win this game, he easily has it. Because I think they're going to let him throw for 400 yards and 8 touchdowns again. Yeah,
I'm going to hit the over as well. And then my last over-under is a game that's being played tomorrow night, Oregon State and Oregon. The over-under is at 62.5. I'm going to go under. I think that there's less scoring than 62.5 in this game. I think obviously both teams better defenses than people think, especially Oregon State's defense. So they held a really good Washington offense to only 22 points last week, and I expect them to hold Oregon pretty slim again. I don't think either team eclipses 30 points in this game. So I'm gonna go the under 62.5.
Yeah, that's kind of wild. That's a lot of points because both these teams are really physical and have really good defenses. So I'm going to go under as well. And then my last two props, they go together. So I'm just going to give them Jalen Milroe, 273.5 passing and rushing, and Peyton Thorne, 186 passing and rushing. I think both of those hit the over. Because especially, I don't know if they're going to throw the ball more. I don't know if they're going to run the ball more, either one of them. So I'm just going to have them doing both of those. I think Peyton Thorne is more likely to hit. I think Alabama has way more weapons to rely on, as Peyton Thorne's pretty much their only hope. So I do think Jalen Milroe is going to hit his as well. Probably, I think he's going to go for about 300 all purpose.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think both will hit, but I think Peyton Thorne is much more likely to. Because I think, obviously there's a lot of to expose in that Auburn front. And I think Jace McClellan and Roydell Williams and Jam Miller have pretty big games on the ground, but Milroe is still going to have some good yards in the air, and then obviously he's going to break away a couple runs. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good. Both of those are pretty good that I'll also go over on. So
well, that does it for episode 29. I mean, we got a big weekend, and then by the next show, it'll be a review show, but we'll talk a little bit about the games we have to look forward to next weekend, and especially the next review or preview show. Y'all better be watching because we'll be talking about Georgia Bama for probably 30 minutes or so. So, yeah. I mean, if you don't have anything else left, y'all go like, subscribe, tell your friends about us, pass us around, let them know where to watch the best college football podcasts. So with that being said, go Dogs.
Roll Tide.